cover effect.
Ready whenever you are. Start the. You ready? Yeah.
So I'll do a false intro for Facebook Live, and then I'll do a formal intro for the podcast.
Okay.
It's quite loud. Don't be alarmed. For the podcast anyway.
All right. Going live.
Hi everyone on Facebook, this is Steve Barrett, Editor-in-Chief of PRWeek. We're about to record our weekly podcast. A bit earlier than normal, we're in the morning, that's why we're blinking and sort of struggling to be awake. We've just had our coffee. We've got a great guest this week, Aaron Shapiro from Huge, CEO. Welcome Aaron, great to have you with us. And we have our regular correspondent, Frank Washkuch, news editor. How you doing, Frank?
Thanks for having me.
You still got over the Steelers?
It'll take a while. Maybe another year or so. We'll see.
Yeah. There's some interesting memes going around about that, though.
I was in a great mood on Monday morning and into Tuesday as we got back from the long
Thing is,
weekend.
nobody could tell the difference. But anyway, that's the news editor demeanour, isn't it?
Yeah,
So we're going to talk about a bunch of things with Aaron about his agency, Huge, and then we'll pick up on CES, some trends, and other topical stories. So please let us know what you think. Make nice comments, ask any questions on the stream, and we'll prepare to get going. Hello and welcome to the PR Week, PR Week's regular weekly roundup of everything that matters in the worlds of PR and communications. My name's Steve Barrett. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of PR Week, going to guide you through the next 25 minutes as we pick up on all the topical issues. Busy start to the year, and we've got an amazing guest today. We've got Aaron Shapiro, who's CEO of Huge. Aaron, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I think we first met in Cannes.
Yes, we
wasn't
did.
It, last
on a warm
year.
Day. The
It was,
opposite day
it
of
was
today.
a lot warmer than it is today, for
warmer than
sure.
today.
Yeah, and great agency, really grown incredibly fast over the last decade. So
Thank
we'll
you.
pick up on how you did that and the trends you're seeing. And we got Frank Washkuch here, who's our news editor. Frank, how are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, well, mate, this show wouldn't be what it is without you.
Just staying humble.
Stay humble.
Just staying humble.
Well, Steelers fans are staying humble.
we
this
really
week.
are this week. We really are. We're eating a lot of crow.
Yeah, Roethlisberger. How many?
No, he played all right.
Did he?
Not early, but he played okay.
Is there another season in Big Ben?
Yeah, I think he's going to play a few more.
Okay.
We'll see, though. You never know.
Well, we will pick up on influencers, NFL stars being influencers a bit later with the Tide Pod Challenge with Rob Gronkowski heavily involved in that. We'll pick up on trends in CES. The Huge team was there in force. We will talk about Pray Tell, a great startup agency that's been honoured several times in the PR Week Awards and Best Places to Work. They're opening up a new office. And we'll talk about Facebook's newsfeed changes and YouTube. What are the implications of these changes for marketers and communicators? They seem to tweak the algorithm fairly regularly, and that can put paid to some great laid plans. So we'll see what that means, and that sort of taps into the influencer topic generally. But Aaron, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about Huge, because one of the agency's grown tremendously. It's about 11 years old, is that right?
Back in 2005, so we're 13 years or so.
Okay.
Years, yeah.
So I guess one of the things looking from afar is that unlike a lot of agencies now who are having a bit of an identity crisis in that they're getting used to the new world, you kind of don't have to turn around the tanker because you started the agency from dot and you could really mould it in the image of a modern agency. So tell us about how you did that and what the sort of mission behind Huge was.
Yeah, so Huge is kind of a classic startup story. We started with myself and 3 partners in a small room about the size of what we're broadcasting
Recording
in today.
in, yeah.
That's right. It was in a neighborhood called Dumbo in Brooklyn, right over the bridge. We were there purely because it was cheap. That was the whole reason. Now it's all hipster cool with Brooklyn.
It's not cheap anymore.
Not cheap anymore, I know. The funny thing is I live on the Upper East Side, and we have some entry-level employees who are like moving to my neighborhood because it's cheaper than Brooklyn nowadays. It's pretty crazy.
The Upper East Side is cheaper than Brooklyn. Right?
That's, yes,
times they are
times
changing.
have changed, that's right. So anyway, we got started as a small web design firm, just doing small little websites, $10,000 projects here and there. But we saw something really interesting, which is that when companies would come to us for website redesign, it was never really about that. It was really about this broader awareness companies had that the world is changing and they needed a strategy for how to succeed in digital. And so we would talk to our clients that it was less about the website, but about the broader strategy of how to transform their company to succeed in the digital economy. And likewise, the value of great experiences. You know, the internet is something we use, right? So it's all about simple, intuitive experiences, things like, you know, the iPhone, Facebook, stuff that we just fall in love with. And that's what makes companies successful. And that inner ethos about thinking about users and focusing on business transformation has been the core of what Huge has been about, even till today. Fast forward till today, we're about 1,500 people with offices around the world, and we're a full-service agency. So while we're anchored in digital, we do everything from full-service campaigns to even public relations, which is a newer offering for us.
Yeah, you launched that last year with
Yes.
Jason Schlossberg.
Yes, we did. But it's all anchored in this belief around thinking about users and helping companies navigate in the modern economy, where people have to market in a very different way than they have been doing in the past.
So back then, I guess it was smartphones were not quite on board yet.
This is pre-iPhone.
It's
Pre-iPhone, pre-Facebook. The internet was the web back then. Right?
Yeah.
Now it's very different, but if you look at the underlying reason of why companies come to Huge, what I often see is this fear and uncertainty about the future. You know, we're in this massively changing world. Every industry is getting as much change in the last 10 years. I think because of machine learning and AI, there's going to be more change and disruption in the next decade, and companies need to figure out what to do. And a lot of our role is to help them navigate this new world so they can be a successful business and a successful marketer in a modern economy.
And then you became part of a holding company, IPG.
Yes,
Tell
that's
us
right.
when that happened and what was the thinking behind that, and you know, becoming part of the system, if you like.
Yeah, so we became purely part of IPG a few years ago. Back in 2012, they fully acquired the company. And overall, it's been a very positive thing. We did that really for scale because we bootstrapped Huge from scratch, and so at some point you need this financial support of a larger holding company. We never raised money or anything like that. But they've really been fantastic partners to help Huge grow its business, and not just for the financial resources, but just access to clients, access to other types of capability and expertise that we didn't have internally. They've really been a fantastic partner in helping build Huge as the agency that it is today.
So talk to us about we sort of looked to the holding company setups, especially closely last year, because they all seem to be going through a little bit of identity crisis. If you've got a setup based on advertising, creative agencies, media agencies, PR firms, digital firms, research, consultancies, you don't really fit into any of those broad buckets, but those broad buckets seem a little outdated. Everyone seems to be converging on the same space, don't they?
The worlds are converging, and they're driven by two things. First, digital is forcing convergence, right? I personally never thought 10 years ago I would be having a PR practice where we're, pitching stories to reporters and things like that. But when you do social, that's part of a social campaign, so it's logical. Digital forces these things together. And also for clients more and more want a single agency to hire. They're confused by all the different types of capabilities and disciplines, who does what. They just want an agency to get their marketing done. And that's forcing a lot of this convergence together. So I think we're seeing a reshuffling of the landscape where the nature of, they'll just be agencies that might have a different DNA because they come from a different heritage, but they all provide similar services, at least on paper. And what makes them unique is their philosophical approach to the work. And as a result, there'll be a reshuffling of who the industry leaders are that are pushing marketing forward. And hopefully, if we play our cards right, Huge will be one of those leaders moving forward.
Do you work closely with other IPG agencies? Is that part of the strategy that you might go in with a McCann or a Weber or something like that? Or do you tend to try and offer the full service yourselves?
If it's appropriate, we partner. We tend to offer most services just as Huge because we believe in the power of integration. I think one of the power of building all of these different capabilities under one roof is, first, they all have a digital perspective, and secondly, they're all interrelated and connected. So, for example, we have communication professionals sitting right next to developers and right next to analytics people. And the magic is what happens when all of those diverse disciplines are together in one room in the same culture, the same ethos, all trying to build something great for clients. And that's the magic that you can't get when you partner with agencies and bring them together. You don't have that kind of close collaboration. That being said, though, we only want to offer best-in-class services, so when it's appropriate, we will bring in partners. Media Brands comes to mind a lot, where we partner with them on a lot of the media buying and planning. We'll do.
Yeah, that's IPG's sort of media planning and buying.
That's right.
Group, yeah.
So what we'll typically do is we'll often do the planning, and then we'll work with them on the buying, where scale is a big benefit.
Scale, yeah.
That's right. So that's a very common model. We have co-location models. So, for example, for Fiat Chrysler of America, where we're their digital agency, we sit right next to Universal McCann, which is part of Media Brands. So that way the buying and the creative is tightly coupled together. And that kind of connectivity is what is most effective, that we really try to foster when we bring solutions to clients.
And how have you expanded globally? How have you sort of tackled that part of the business growth?
So it's all been organic growth, and we have a global footprint. So we have a vibrant office in London that services Europe. We have an office in Singapore for Asia. And then we have an operation in Colombia that services Latin America.
And
let's not forget Toronto, if you count. I don't know, is Canada
I
international
think so.
or not?
I had to get a visa to go there.
That's true.
International.
International.
Being a Brit, you know.
I have a work permit, so that counts, right? Yeah. So we have a very, very vibrant office in Toronto, which is actually one of the fastest growing parts of our entire network.
Yeah. So I guess my question is, you're still the new kids on the block compared to a lot of other holding companies. JWT's been around over 100 years, for example. How do you keep that though? Because the more the years go by, things maybe inertia might creep in. There's a danger that happens, or you all of a sudden you're not the bright new penny, or you're not the new kid on the block. There's other players coming up. How do you keep that culture of innovation and the culture where you're always going to be cutting edge?
It's a great question. It's something I think about all the time. I think a lot of my job is to make sure that we always keep the edge and stay entrepreneurial and keep that culture of innovation going. And we do a lot of things big and small from that. It's everything from how is our office set up, things like quarterly hackathons, our thought leadership program. We have a huge fellows initiative where people can do projects that are separate from billable work. There's tons of things that we do, that a lot of which have sprung up organically that we now operationalize. And one of the things that I'm most proud of at Huge is that we as a company are very good at change. We're very good at launching new capabilities, new services, changing how we structure things. And I think that if I think about Huge, 5-10 years from now, I'm sure that the services that we provide are going to be completely different because digital is changing, the world is changing so much. But as long as we remain a company that's true to our roots around a user-centric approach to work and around this willingness to change and try new things, then we'll always be successful. And that's what I try to keep the DNA of the company about.
Yeah, I visited your offices in Brooklyn. There's 800 people there, and there's all sorts. It's a great vibe in there. You can feel the culture. It's people making things.
That's right.
How does that fit in?
We're very much a maker culture. I mean, I personally have never done agencies before Huge. I was a product guy that did internet startups in the first .com boom and beyond. And one of the things that I think the people that really fit in culture for Huge are people who love to make things and build stuff. And the way I look at it is that Huge is our one really, really small way to move the world forward through technology. And that one of the things I'm personally excited about is that the things that we create are seen and used and experienced by millions of people every day, even the smallest initiatives that we do. And that's part of the culture of Huge, and it's part of what pushes us forward. And I think that ethos applies really well to disciplines like PR, where you're not theoretically making stuff, because that's the advantage that we have to clients. For example, when we look at any public relations initiative that a client will talk to a client about, we'll often not just talk about what we can kind of promote, but also help craft the story. And a lot of crafting the story is helping clients actually create news by creating innovation and doing innovative things that we can help build with them that then gets pushed out to the broader world. And I think that's more and more of this kind of active communications where you're actually creating the news as opposed to just finding ways to spin the existing story. By doing meaningful things that push the world forward is more and more going to be where PR is going that we can help lead.
Okay, well, sounds great. It's good to see an agency there's a lot of sort of doom and gloom about the agency world in a way, isn't there? And so it's good to see agencies sort of forging into the future and creating the new models, that clients want. And I think a lot of other firms are trying to almost retro engineer themselves to do what you already do.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's a lot of what I feel that is the great position we're in for Huge, is that we don't have to change. If we just be who we are, I know that we're going to be successful. And that's a lot of the effort, is to make sure we just stay true to who we are. I personally am very excited about the agency space, where there's definitely been macroeconomic issues if you look at the financial performance of all the holding companies, so I'm not naive to that. But in the end, creativity and communications and marketing has never been more relevant to the world and never been more important. And agencies have the ability to make tremendous impact on society if we deploy our firepower and expertise in the right way, and that's very energizing for me.
Yeah, that's good stuff. All right, Frank, let's get into some topical stuff.
Sure,
and
let's get into the news.
Yeah, well, we're going to get your take on CES, Aaron, but Frank, do you want to give us a top line on that first? And was there anything that particularly stood out this year, or what was the buzz of the floor? I saw 10% of the CES was now auto related.
And that's something that's really intriguing to me, especially considering the closeness to the auto show, of course. And you hear about the CEO of Ford talking about how he's trying to move into almost a post-car environment. Really fascinating stuff. I'm interested to hear what you thought, having been there, stood out to you the most, Aaron.
Yeah, so the automotive stuff is amazing, and we can talk about self-driving cars forever. I like a lot of folks, I think it's going to be one of the most, I think people are underestimating how big a transformation, both good and bad, it is for society. It's pretty amazing. I thought the most interesting thing about CES, just from a macro viewpoint, is there wasn't a lot of new things, in the sense that if you compare CES this year to last year, it was a lot of the same themes and stuff we're talking about. It was almost like those ideas kind of grew up, where we're now starting to get mainstream adoption.
Right.
Like a year ago, you saw lots of stuff on AI and Alexa and things like that, but it's exciting is this year, it's like, wow, it's everywhere. And that, I think, is exciting, where it's almost like these cutting-edge technologies we've been talking about a while, like VR, AR, machine learning, have finally grown up to the extent where you're starting to see them in real-world applications to a broad enough degree where it's starting to impact people's day-to-day lives. And that's pretty exciting for me.
So one thing that I think a lot of people were watching from places other than CES was how Intel would respond to the chip crisis. Was that something people were buzzing about on the spot?
Well, I mean, for full disclosure, I personally did not go to CES, but I got a lot of behind-the-scenes footage from our teams and clients that were there. CES was a client of ours too. We just launched their website to tie into CES. I think that the Intel situation is an issue that people are concerned about and have to manage, but in the end, it's a problem that we're going to manage and get past. I mean, the security has to be solved, and technology is too big in our society not to address it. So we're dealing with a situation, just like a lot of the other security things that have come up. So I don't think it's anything out of the ordinary than all the other security things that have come up that are big deals that we have to deal with. And eventually we'll get to a place where we've kind of tackled security to a degree where it's more manageable than it is today.
So one thing we looked at a couple of weeks ago in a story was how do very small challenger brands actually make a dent when they're at CES, which is a really challenging
Very
thing.
hard.
And when you're chatting with folks who work at technology focused agencies, things like that, sometimes if you're chatting with them off the record, they groan to you a little bit and they're like, we're going to CES and client has all these big expectations and we know we're not going to actually get done what they want, and you hear that a lot. And have you worked with smaller clients in the past that really want to get something out of CES, and what's your strategy with that?
The big thing is about the story, right? CES is a very, very crowded place, but it's an amazing platform where the world is focused on it, and great stories from CES will be told to the world, and a lot of great things have launched from there. The issue is not going to CES or not. The issue is, do you have a story that's worth telling? And if you don't, let's create a story that'll create that kind of buzz and awareness. Too often, companies come with products that are run-of-the-mill, and they don't have a good story, and they wonder why they're not going to make an impact, and it's because you're not newsworthy. That's the harsh reality. So it's entirely what you make of it.
There were quite a lot of robots there, weren't there? But
there were a lot of robots.
Quite a few lame robots, to be honest. It was like, this robot could pick something up off the ground. You're like, yeah, okay, that's great.
That's indicative of the problem. So the problem, and you look at that situation, is that a comms problem or is that a product problem, right?
Yeah.
There's only so much.
There's one that could pour you a beer.
That's true. I don't.
That's useful.
But it points to you can critique whether or not those specific things are going to work or not. But the larger trend is pretty exciting, which is we're at this inflection point where robots and machine learning are starting to hit mainstream adoption. It's like I think the most interesting thing related to this time in history was not CES, what happened right before CES, which is that, like, it's estimated that 30 some odd million voice-enabled devices like Alexa were sold in the holiday season. So all of a sudden, we have a new computing platform that's hit mass adoption.
Yeah.
That's AI based. That's pretty amazing.
And that's before the Apple speaker, or I'm forgetting the proper name of it even
It's
comes
before
out.
Apple.
Yeah.
Google is just getting going with their device, right? We're hitting real mainstream adoption. Whereas the start of what's arguably the next big computing platform, the first true post-mobile social platform that's out there, and you saw that validated by CES, where you had Alexa inside everything imaginable. That's really exciting for society at large and for marketers in business, that you have this emergence of this new kind of ecosystem that's taking shape.
Yeah, voice was a big trend. You mentioned Alexa. She was one of the few female voices there, wasn't she? I mean, there was a bit of controversy about the speaker lineup, and it's dude heavy to say the least. And tech is, can be a male-dominated environment. What's your take on that? And what's your sort of gender ratio and diversity ratio at Huge, for example?
So Huge is very diverse as agencies and technology companies go. One of the things I'm most proud of is that the majority of our executive leadership team is female, including if I look at our executive leadership team of even the top 5 people, 3 of them are like the 5 top executives, myself and 4 other people, 3 of those are women. So we've been very proud of that at Huge, and diversity is a very core part of what makes Huge successful. And I would argue that diversity is something that is not just something you should do because it's the right thing, but it actually makes good business. I think that if you look at diversity gives you a level of perspective about the work that pushes it better and creates more mainstream adoption. So it's not just the right thing to do, but it's good business practice as well.
Absolutely, but that snapshot at CES suggests that a lot of other companies are not following the same strategy yet.
A lot of our industry has a lot of work to do, and I think it's great that there's awareness around this issue and there's focus on it, and that companies are starting to proactively address this issue to do more and more things about it.
Yeah. Okay, so I mentioned the next sort of Huge in the market, or the next funky startup, and Frank, one agency we've covered a lot is Pray Tell.
Yes.
Another Brooklyn-based firm, but they've spread their wings a bit and they've opened up a new office.
That's right. They are moving into Chicago, and their launch client in Chicago is Goose Island, which is the Anheuser-Busch InBev craft beer. That account was most recently held by Golin, which is a bit of a hometown agency for Goose Island. And they have about 8 staffers to start out in Chicago and looking to hire more.
It's great.
Yeah.
What would your advice be to them if they've just taken a client off one of your sister firms? So I guess you're not going to give them too much advice, but you're also in Chicago yourselves. But you'll have been through that process where you're starting to open offices in other cities and then expand globally. I guess the challenge there is to keep that startup feel and initial spark that made the agency what it was, and then scale it.
That's right. My biggest advice is just don't mess it up. It's like you have a good thing, your agency's going well. Like most agencies fail at a certain point because they lose sight of who they are. But if you stay true to who you are and you focus on that, and you make sure that you operationalize how you keep that focus as you grow, then you can be successful.
What did you find unique about the Chicago market?
So I think Chicago is a very interesting market. We just won a significant amount of work for McDonald's back in the fall, and as a result of that, we opened up an office there, and we have other clients in Chicago as well. So we have about roughly 20 people on the ground. And Chicago is a great city. I think that there's a lot of there's a strong, rich heritage of great advertising and public relations agencies there, and there's a very good critical mass of talent. From our perspective, we saw that there was an opportunity to create, to add to the market a huge perspective to that place, which is really around cutting edge digital. And so we saw an opening for that where we could be very successful. So that was kind of our perspective. And I'm guessing that this firm as well has saw a similar opportunity, where that kind of digital opportunity we saw available for that city, where we saw, relatively speaking, as broad generalities, that digital was being underserviced in the market is kind of what we saw at a high level, and I'm sure they saw the same thing.
Yeah, some great companies based in Chicago, and PRWeek is 99% likely to take our annual conference there in October, actually, this year.
Yeah, it's a great city. There's a lot of a lot of great agencies there, a lot of good talent. There's a lot of good companies that are in the Midwest. So we're really excited about it, and we're very bullish about growing a pretty big operation in Chicago.
Okay, Frank, let's talk about Facebook's newsfeed changes. That's been a big story this week. You know, one of the pitfalls of, well, not a pitfall, one of the things you've got to be aware of is you can construct a great social campaign or influencer campaign around Facebook or one of the other platforms, and then they might tweak the algorithm, and your best laid plans are sort of shattered. So tell us what's changed this week. I think YouTube's also made a couple of changes.
Right.
And what are the impacts for...
Here it is in a nutshell. It's less branded content, less media and news content, and more content from your friends and family and other contacts on Facebook.
That sounds like almost going back to its roots, because
Exactly,
that's how it started.
So, there was this bit of panic in the day or two after from, you saw a lot of media
as well,
personalities
we get a lot
on
of
Twitter
traffic from
freaking out. I think it sort of remains to be seen how far they go with this, just how much they're going to cut media out of the prescription, so to speak, and what kind of impact that's going to have. But it's suffice to say that the media companies aren't looking forward to it so far.
I must admit, I get extremely annoyed by a lot of the, excuse the phrase, crap in my feed, crap content. You know, I like good content in my feed, and Facebook's a great channel for PRWeek content. We know that. We get a lot of, we're broadcasting live on Facebook now. So it's striking that balance, I guess. And from an agency point of view and a client counsel point of view, one, I guess you've got to just keep your clients up to date with what it means for them, but also how do you deal with the fact that you know that at some point it might completely change and you've got to just sort of rip it up and start again?
Yeah, so our perspective, and this is one that we've had for several years now, is that the reality is Facebook is an ad platform. Facebook is a media channel. It's an ad platform, just like people who advertise on PRWeek, or they advertise on Google, or they advertise on NBC. And that's just what it is, and you pay for audience. So if you're an advertiser and a marketer, you're looking at it from that perspective, they're going to change the rules, but in the end, you spend money and you get the audience that you want. The days of a marketer getting free traffic because you're building up likes, that game has been dead for years. So while it's very devastating for media companies, and I worry about the broader media landscape because of it, from a societal standpoint, but from an advertiser standpoint, it's still an ad platform, so you continue to advertise. And the social aspect of it has always been, for a while, getting people to share that content on Facebook, and that's not going to go away. So it doesn't really have much impact from an advertiser standpoint.
There is a theory out there that less news on Facebook means people will visit news websites more often. I don't know if that holds water, but there is that kind of alternative theory that's been floating around on social media.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all about mobile as well, isn't it? That's how we're consuming content these days. So any media company has got to be optimized for mobile. If you look at new startups like Axios, it's been incredibly successful because it's optimized for mobile from day one. And we're all trying to do that and optimize our content for it. And Facebook is part of that, So, but the days of having communities, organic communities, that PR firms actually got a lot of business out of that for a while. Yeah, you're right. I think that does seem to have died away. What about the whole thing about Facebook saying it's not a media company, and they sort of took their time getting on top of the fake news issue or sort of hate content on their platform because they said, well, we're not a media platform. Clearly they are, and they had to, and they've been sort of shamed into doing it. What's your sort of take on that whole part of the equation?
No matter how they spin it, even with these news, they're a media company, obviously, and they're going to have to fix the fake news problem. But I actually think that they're going to fix it. If you read Zuckerberg's message he did at the start of the year, and I take him at face value from what he's saying, I do think that he's passionate about those things. Like they know it's a problem and they need to fix it, right? I mean, and I think they can fix it. It's a complicated challenge. They've talked about they're hiring massive numbers of people to start to screen content, and it's going to be a giant human/AI endeavor that you always have to play whack-a-mole. But you've sort of solved it with spam. Like you think about it, like back in the day, like our email was overrun by spam, and that's been heavily controlled. They've heavily whacked that out, and it'll eventually be something that they're gonna have to solve, and they are trying to solve. It's no different than the work that YouTube has to do to take down inappropriate content that they they endlessly
Got to
fight.
get on top of that.
That's right.
That's, a lot of brands just won't go on YouTube now because of that.
Right, and the fake news issue on Facebook is an existential threat to their business, and they understand it. So they have to fix that problem.
Yeah, I think they can definitely do it. I'm slightly cynical on this one. They digital rights and music, they've solved that now. You cannot put music up on Facebook. It will not be uploaded because of digital rights management. Well, if they can do it with that, they can do it with other types of content as well. That was pushed by the music companies and the rights holders. So
yeah, I mean, this is admittedly more fuzzy because there are different definitions of what's
Sure.
fake news, and
Sure.
it's always a blurry line, right? But I'm confident it'll get solved.
So I actually quit Facebook, more or less. I mean, I still have an account. I just don't use it, and I don't check it very often. And I did it during last summer, during the election, because there was just, in my opinion, there was just too much garbage on there. And it was just too much conspiracy theories and things like that. And I sort of look at it like, well, I have Twitter for that. And I plus informed voices and media outlets and things like that. So why would I need another version of that?
Yeah, I mean,
it's a great point.
Yeah.
So definitely. So I will one up you. I'm probably the only person who is not on Facebook at all ever. So I exist on Facebook purely as a dead end node, still with a ghost guy, so my wife can say she's married because it has to link to someone. I have exactly one friend and no posts.
So have you ever thought about taking the plunge, or?
Never. And personally, it's because of my entire work life is the internet.
Right.
And for leisure, I just want to be away from screens and with my kids.
Are you on
and stuff
Instagram?
like that. Nothing. I'm not on it.
Okay, because Instagram is kind of it's incredible, and of course, owned by Facebook, so it's incredibly popular. I'm interested to see what they do with WhatsApp. If you look at WeChat in China and Asia, that is an incredible platform that closes the loop on e-commerce at the end of it.
It's fascinating, and it's interesting when you look at AI and machine learning in the U.S. how text-based chatbots haven't really taken off yet, and Facebook actually shut down Facebook Messenger.
Yeah, that's right.
Facebook M was pretty quiet about it, compared to WeChat, whereas as you're alluding to, this chat interface is the primary way people do everything. It's pretty fascinating. So I think it's only a matter of time before that comes to the States, but it hasn't quite taken off yet, which I've been surprised by. I actually thought it would have taken off before our voice, but it hasn't quite happened.
Yeah, we had Ilan Zhou from Reuter Finn on last week,
Uh-huh.
and she was talking about how in the Chinese market, I mean, people do absolutely everything through these apps, and
Yep.
we're so far behind on that.
Yeah, and if you go to Brazil, I was there in Sao Paulo before Christmas, before the holiday, and everyone uses WhatsApp there, even in terms of client communications.
Oh yeah, no, it's interesting where we like to think, being in America, we're super advanced in the central world and all this stuff, and you go overseas and you just see that there's a lot of parts of our world that we're just behind on from a technology standpoint. Like you think you have fast internet here, you go to South Korea and it's like the equivalent of us being on like a 28 modem or something still. But we're in such a bubble here, we often don't realize that a lot of the world is much further advanced than a lot of these different adoption
absolutely.
curves.
Okay, we're running out of time, so let's finish on the Tide Pod Challenge. What is this, Frank?
I don't want to know why kids are eating Tide Pods and then filming themselves
chewy,
doing
they're
it.
soft and pliable and blue.
Yeah, it's
Or
not
green.
for me. Anyway, I don't get it.
But yeah, no, they shouldn't eat them.
I blame millennials.
Don't eat them.
I blame millennials.
Frank, you blame millennials for everything.
That's true.
But Rob Gronkowski's got involved with this. Talk us through.
Yeah, so I guess they thought that New England Patriots tight end Rob
You
Gronkowski
see
was
the vitriol with which he even said that.
Look, he should have been suspended for more games after he tried to kill that Buffalo Bills player on the field after a play was done a few weeks
I sense
ago.
a little bitterness.
Yeah, I have a rooting stake here. I'll just admit that. Anyway, getting
we are
over
in New
these
York.
things.
Frank from Philly.
Getting over these things. Anyway, so they have
wanna
turned
like
to
my house.
him to deliver a safety message that resonates with young people to stop chewing on Tide Pods.
And stop assaulting people on the field.
Yeah, and I'd love to know how this got started, this Tide Pod thing. I just don't get it. It doesn't look appetizing
It's
to
the
me
magic.
in any
It's
way.
the magic of the internet and internet memes.
Yeah.
Who knows where they come from?
But I guess, Aaron, the serious point here is what happened with influencers. We saw Logan Paul. What happened there. Pretty disgusting sort of content.
Sure.
And we see the Gronk. He might be a hero to many, but then he does something like that on the field, and his image changes. How do you navigate that as an agency, sort of working with influencers and
So,
advising
I want
clients?
to start off by saying it's a great viral video. everyone listening to this podcast,
Yeah.
watch the video. I think they did an A+ job on making a video to counter this. And kudos to Tide for spinning it. You could imagine another company going to full reactive mode, like recall, we're going to change the product this. Instead, they're proactively part of the solution. I think it was brilliant the way they handled it.
So I'm joking around about this because it's Gronkowski and my obvious bitterness about how my team's football season has ended. But I think this is really good in that you kind of see how he could resonate with that audience really
100%,
well.
100%. And the way they did it, like no, like the shock value, it was just perfectly on tone.
And Tide also notes that they've been on top of this for a couple years. This isn't the first thing they've done in response. So they're aware of this issue and they've been working on it. So
Aaron, just to finish, if your client, if Gronkowski does that on-field thing, or a similar thing with any influencer, client comes to you and they say, "What should we do?" What's your advice to them?
Look, it's a risk. The risk whenever you have an influencer, whether it's a celebrity or someone with 5,000 Instagram followers, is like they can do something inappropriate that's going to hurt your brand. That's the risk you take, right? But the benefit is the benefit of those endorsements is the ability to break through the clutter, as we've seen. It's a calculated risk all marketers have to take, and hopefully there's, to be cynical, hopefully there's enough money at stake for a lot of these people that's a self-correcting mechanism as they behave yourself. But we've seen a lot of big celebrities make a ton of money and blow up. So you never know.
Yeah, and that's that's a much cheaper way and a more effective way to do it than taking out a paid ad on TV or something like that. So
definitely, and so it's a risk people take. But the good news is that when influencers do go bad, so to speak, there's a lot of proven crisis management approach that PR professionals do to separate the brand from the endorser, and then you have to move on, and that's just the risk you take.
Yeah, for sure. Aaron, great to chat to you. Thanks for joining us. Enjoyed the podcast today.
It was fun.
Just a couple of customer services announcements to end on. Today, Thursday, is the first deadline for our PR Week Global Awards, so make sure you've got your best work submitted in that, or apply for an extension. Our Brand Film Festival, in its third year, we've got the big gala screening in New York City in May. We have a deadline of Jan 22nd, that's Monday, for the first deadline for those, so make sure you get your best films in for that. That includes you, Aaron. Hope to see some work from Huge.
We're there.
We're also, we've opened up our agency business report. We're looking for submissions to that now, so all the forms went out yesterday. If you haven't got your form yet, please contact abr@prweek.com and we'll get that over to you. We're also conducting a survey on sexual harassment in the PR industry, so the link to that is in our breakfast briefing and on our website, so do go and take that survey. We want to, very serious issue, and we want to take the temperature of that in our industry. So thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. We'll be back next time on the PR Week.